Welcome back. On a crisp October evening in 1869, the limestone hills of Tennessee lay under a quiet, almost reverent darkness. A small farmhouse perched on a modest rise, bathed in the weak glow of candlelight, where 23 souls gathered for what they believed would be a simple evening of prayer and fellowship. The air was scented with smoke from the hearth and damp autumn leaves, carrying a faint tang of the nearby forest. The congregation, composed of families and a few curious neighbors, murmured soft prayers, their voices blending with the distant sighing of the wind through skeletal branches. No one suspected that by dawn, 14 of them would vanish without a trace. Inside the Harper residence, everything appeared normal. The wooden floorboards creaked under cautious footsteps, and the hearth cast long shadows against the walls, dancing and twisting with every flicker of flame. Candles sputtered in the draught, yet their light failed to pierce the deep corners of the room. The women sat together in quiet conversation, their hands clasped over worn hymnals, while the men murmured prayers or discussed the mundane concerns of farm and harvest. Lydia Harper, the widow who owned the house, moved between them like a silent guardian, her presence noted but largely ignored, as though she were part of the walls themselves. Yet there was a subtle dissonance, imperceptible at first. A candle guttered despite no draught. Shadows seemed to linger longer than light. A soft knocking, faint but regular, echoed from below the floorboards. Some dismissed it as the house settling, wood contracting, or the distant howl of a fox. Others, more sensitive, exchanged uneasy glances, feeling a weight pressing against the edges of the room, a stillness that was not empty, but expectant. No one could have articulated it, yet each felt that something was wrong, that the air itself seized to thicken, pressing into lungs and minds with quiet insistence. By midnight, most had retired to modest bedrooms, leaving a handful by the hearth. The wind had fallen silent, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. Only the soft, almost imperceptible knocking persisted, now accompanied by a sensation of vertigo that one attendee would later describe as the floor tilting beneath her feet. Doors were closed, windows latched, but the house did not feel contained. It felt alive. Every heartbeat seemed to echo in the thick shadows, mingling with sounds that could not be located, traced, or explained. When the first light of dawn crept through the windows, a startling reality emerged. 14 of the 23 souls had disappeared. Shoes remained by beds, blankets draped carelessly across sleeping figures who were no longer there, and the scent of candle smoke lingered, stubbornly, as though it could not reconcile itself with absence. Not a struggle, not a scream, not a trace of panic. It was as if the night itself had swallowed them, and the Harper house exhaled its occupants with a silence that would haunt the region for generations. Before we continue, remember this channel is not for the faint-hearted. Only those willing to confront the darkest corners of human history can proceed. If you're brave enough to continue, hit subscribe and share where you are watching from. What you are about to hear is not legend, it is history, and history can be far more terrifying than fiction. Next, we explore the mysterious figure who remained, the woman whose presence lingered long after the vanished were gone, shaping events that would span centuries. The morning after the vanishings, the Harper house stood silently, untouched and indifferent to the tragedy that had occurred within its walls. Neighbors who approached cautiously reported nothing unusual on the surface. The farmhouse appeared intact, the windows unbroken, the hearth cold and empty. Yet those who lingered too long described a sensation of being watched, of footsteps echoing where none could exist, and of a presence that seemed to press against the very marrow of their bones. The first to speak openly of it was Mrs. Agnes Whitaker, a neighbor, who later recounted a fleeting glimpse of a woman in dark, old-fashioned clothing, standing at the edge of the forest line, her face pale and immobile, her eyes fixed on the empty house. Lydia Harper, it seemed, had not vanished, or perhaps she had never truly been among the living in the sense the others understood. Those who glimpsed her described an uncanny stillness, a wrongness that unsettled the mind. Her movements were minimal, yet somehow deliberate, her presence weaving a thread of unease through the air. Survivors would later describe feeling a weight in her gaze, as if she had witnessed not only their actions but the intentions of their hearts. She was not merely observing, she was orchestrating. The local authorities, baffled by the disappearance of 14 individuals without a trace, conducted a formal investigation, but the Harper house yielded nothing tangible. No signs of forced entry, no footprints beyond the threshold, no traces of struggle. In the absence of evidence, speculation flourished. Madness, secret passageways, or perhaps the intervention of forces beyond comprehension. Yet even the most rational observers could not dismiss the testimony of neighbors who described Lydia's silent presence, appearing and disappearing at will, always at the periphery of vision, always just beyond and standing. Visitors who approached the house reported a strange atmospheric distortion. The air felt denser, colder, yet stifling, carrying a scent of damp limestone and decayed wood. Sounds were muted, yet sometimes accentuated unnaturally. The creak of a floorboard, the whisper of leaves, or, most unnervingly, a faint knocking, rhythmic and deliberate, emanating from beneath the house. Those who lingered described vertigo, sudden disorientation, and a sense of time stretching or collapsing. Maps and compasses seemed unreliable. Even the sun's movement appeared altered, leaving shadows where none should fall. Accounts from subsequent decades, recorded in hushed notes and restricted archives, suggested that Lydia Harper's influence extended far beyond the original incident. Witnesses, investigators, and curious locals reported fleeting glimpses of her figure, unexplained sounds from below the earth, and a recurring sensation that the ground itself was watching them. Children claimed to hear whispers in languages they could not comprehend, while adults recounted waking to find furniture displaced or objects mysteriously moved. Some disappeared entirely, vanishing in circumstances echoing the events of that October night. Yet the most chilling pattern persisted. Every account, every fragment of evidence pointed toward the root cellar, the heart of the house, the locus of something profoundly unnatural. Those who ventured there experienced the same compulsion, the same terror, as if the structure itself demanded recognition, obedience, or surrender. It was no longer merely a home, it had become a threshold. Next, we dive into the life and fate of Dr. Robert Thorne, whose curiosity would lead him into the very heart of Harper's enduring enigma, and into a darkness that history itself would struggle to contain. By 1969, the Harper house had faded from public memory, its broken windows staring blankly through decades of neglect. Yet for Dr. Robert Thorne, a respected historian and folklorist, it represented an irresistible enigma, a historical puzzle that demanded resolution. Thorne had spent months poring over obscure records, diaries, and legal documents, compiling the fragmentary accounts of 1869. The disappearances, the rhythmic knocking, and the mysterious figure of Lydia Harper suggested something far beyond coincidence. Colleagues warned him against obsession, yet he pressed on, driven by a mixture of academic rigor and something less rational, a gnawing sense that the house held a truth that must be confronted. On August 14, 1969, Thorne arrived at the Harper property with two graduate students, Michael Chen and Sarah Duval. The land, overgrown and silent, exuded a palpable unease. Trees pressed against the decaying walls, and the remnants of the porch sagged as if weighted by invisible hands. Even in bright daylight, the house seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, cloaking itself in shadow. Sarah recorded in her journal, "The air itself feels wrong. It presses down on you, and yet it moves around, like the house is breathing." Michael noted the silence, broken only by the occasional creak of timber or rustle of leaves, sounds that seemed amplified unnaturally. For 3 days, the team documented the site. They measured walls, photographed the structure, and surveyed the overgrown grounds. Yet the most unsettling discoveries were underground. In the root cellar, Thorne found walls of limestone untouched by water, earth compacted yet undisturbed, and symbols carved in intricate geometric patterns. The markings mirrored diagrams found in Lydia Harper's long-hidden grimoire, a leather-bound text Thorne had painstakingly studied in the archives. Standing in the keys, Ella, he felt a sudden vertigo at a central point, accompanied by a faint but unmistakable auditory phenomenon, knocking, precisely 3 beats, pause, 3 beats. He called to Michael and Sarah, but they heard nothing. The house seemed to whisper to him alone. That evening, ignoring their protests, Thorne resolved to remain overnight. He claimed he needed to experience the phenomenon directly to understand what the 1869 victims had endured. Michael and Sarah left reluctantly, expecting him to return the following morning. He did not. By noon, when Thorne failed to appear, the two students returned with local authorities. His car remained where he had parked it. His belongings lay untouched inside the house. The flashlight he had left on the floor had burned out. But Dr. Robert Thorne himself had vanished, leaving only an empty room and an echo of the past. A tape recorder, recovered days later in the root cellar, captured the last 40 minutes of his life. Initially calm, his voice became frantic as he descended the cellar stairs again. Rhythmic knocking, whispers, and then panic. "The walls, they're breathing. Lydia Harper, she's here. All of them. Underneath everything." The final recording ended with dragging sounds and a heavy impact, followed by silence. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation found no trace of Thorne. His body never recovered. The disappearance of a scholar, a man of reason, confirmed the Harper house as more than legend. It was a locus of an enduring, inexplicable horror, its influence crossing generations. Next, we examine the official investigation, the attempts to suppress knowledge, and the growing suspicion that the Harper house had become a threshold between reality and something far darker. The disappearance of Dr. Robert Thorne sent shockwaves through the small town of Elizabethton and the academic circles at Vanderbilt University. Authorities arrived at the Harper site but found nothing. No body, no struggle, only the cold, silent house. County officials quickly sealed the property with chain-link fences, posted warning signs, and boarded the crumbling structure. The Harper house was rendered off-limits to the public, a forgotten relic behind a wall of bureaucratic silence. Documents, diaries, and Thorne's meticulous research notes were confiscated, catalogued, and restricted from public view. Even the leather-bound grimoire, previously studied in archives, was locked away in a secure vault. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation offered a sterile, rational explanation. Thorne had suffered psychological breakdown, wandered into the surrounding forest, and succumbed to exposure. Few were convinced. Thorne's colleagues remembered him as meticulous, calm, and rigorously scientific. To vanish entirely, leaving behind equipment, personal effects, and a functioning tape recorder, suggested a fate far stranger than mere disorientation. In 1970, Dr. Patricia Morrison, a close colleague of Thorne's, petitioned for access to the same restricted materials, hoping to continue his investigation. Denied repeatedly, she eventually obtained limited access in 1971, enough to confirm that Thorne's findings hinted at something beyond historical study. Morrison concluded that the evidence pointed toward a phenomenon outside conventional explanation: inexplicable disappearances, underground disturbances, and a lingering, oppressive presence at the Harper site. Yet her publications were circulated only in limited academic journals, dismissed by mainstream historians as speculative. By 1972, the Harper house was all but erased. The remaining limestone foundations and portions of walls were demolished, the root cellar filled with concrete and rubble, and the land graded level. County records euphemistically cited liability concerns and the elimination of an attractive nuisance. The deliberate destruction effectively severed physical access to the site, but not the lingering force within it. Shortly thereafter, Morrison herself disappeared while attempting to return for further study, leaving only her abandoned vehicle behind. Her disappearance, strikingly reminiscent of Thorne's, fueled whispered fears among local historians and paranormal researchers alike. Meanwhile, subsequent efforts to investigate the site were met with obstruction. Graduate students and journalists who attempted to access county archives or the property itself were denied, often under vague claims of state security or ongoing investigations. David Keller, a University of Tennessee student in 1978, discovered a pattern of unusually high mortality among residents living near the Harper property in the decades following the original incidents. Yet when he tried to pursue the story, he was warned by officials to abandon the thesis. Pressure, intimidation, and bureaucratic stonewalling ensured the Harper mystery remained buried. Despite these efforts, rumors and fragmentary reports continued to surface. Each October, stories circulated of hikers or curious investigators experiencing disorientation, rhythmic underground knocking, or glimpses of a spectral woman resembling Lydia Harper. Though skeptics dismissed most accounts as misperception or urban legend, a consistent pattern emerged. The Harper property had become a locus of persistent, anomalous events. The disappearance of scholars, the suppression of evidence, and the unexplained phenomena surrounding the site suggested something active, intelligent, and dangerous, a presence that had survived decades of human intervention. Next, we delve into the first modern incidents at the Harper site in the 1980s, when casual hikers and teenagers encountered the lingering horrors that had claimed Thorne and Morrison, demonstrating that whatever resided there had not been confined by demolition or time. It was March 7, 1983, when the Harper House's sinister legacy resurfaced in the surrounding Cherokee National Forest. Ranger Thomas Waverly, on routine patrol, encountered 3 hikers, Gregory Morton, David Sullivan, and Jennifer Reeves, lost and visibly terrorized. According to Waverly's report, the trio appeared frozen, their eyes wide with a fear that seemed to pierce the very air. They described hearing rhythmic knocking from underground near the overgrown stone foundation, a sound growing louder and closer, as if something beneath the earth was tracking their movements. Jennifer Reeves's account was the most chilling. She claimed to have glimpsed a woman standing near the foundation, her clothing unmistakably from the 19th century. "She just stood there, watching us," Reeves told Waverly. "And then she smiled. It wasn't a human smile. It was wrong. All wrong." Waverly noted in his supplementary report that the surrounding forest was eerily silent. No birds sang, no insects buzzed, and even the wind seemed to avoid the area. The natural world itself felt disturbed, complicit in the fear gripping the hikers. County records later confirmed that the hikers had indeed been near the remnants of the Harper property. Waverly's initial suspicion that dehydration or disorientation might explain the reports was challenged by his own sensation of being watched when revisiting the site. He recommended permanent avoidance of the area, a warning largely ignored in the years to follow. 4 years later, on Halloween night, October 31, 1987, the Harper site drew a group of 5 teenagers seeking thrills from the legends surrounding the haunted property. Mark Patterson, Lisa Henderson, Robert Mallister, Jennifer Yates, and Thomas Bishop approached the overgrown foundation, flashlights cutting through the thick darkness. Their initial bravado quickly dissolved into terror. The same rhythmic knocking heard by the hikers in 1983 echoed beneath the earth. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats, relentless, intelligent, responding to their presence. Confusion set in as the teens attempted to leave. The forest itself seemed to twist, paths that should have led them to safety, looping them inexplicably back to the foundation. Jennifer Yates later described feeling as if the trees themselves had rearranged. Mark Patterson was treated for extreme psychological trauma, his vitals normal, but his mind seemingly scarred by the experience. Lisa Henderson's parents reported her speaking in sleep, uttering phrases in a corrupted form of medieval German, a language she had never studied. 3 of the teenagers suffered recurring nightmares, each haunted by the image of a woman in period clothing standing at the foot of their beds. These incidents confirmed a terrifying pattern. The Harper property was not merely a site of historical tragedy. It was a locus of persistent, intelligent menace, interacting with those who approached. Whether through auditory phenomena, spatial disorientation, or psychological manipulation, the site exerted influence over those who dared enter its vicinity. The disappearances of Thorne and Morrison, the consistent reports from hikers and teenagers, and the increasing documentation of strange, targeted phenomena suggested an enduring, malevolent presence that could not be rationalized or ignored. Next, we explore the 1995 investigation led by trained professionals, Dr. Elizabeth Marsh and Raymond Torres, whose encounter with the Harper site escalated the horror to levels previously only hinted at, capturing evidence that defied explanation and challenged the limits of human perception. In June 1995, the Harper site drew attention from a different type of visitor. Dr. Elizabeth Marsh, a clinical psychologist specializing in trauma, and Raymond Torres, a field investigator, arrived under the guise of a historical documentation project. Equipped with video cameras, electromagnetic detectors, and audio recorders, their declared mission was environmental survey work. Privately, they aimed to document the paranormal phenomena long whispered about by local historians and witnesses. The first 2 hours of their visit were unremarkable. Marsh and Torres recorded the overgrown stone foundation, measured vegetation density, and observed soil composition. But at the 2-hour mark, Torres noticed a circular area in the center of the property where vegetation grew thinner, forming an unnatural ring roughly 15 feet across. The pair began recording with precision, attempting to detect anomalies invisible to the naked eye. Their electromagnetic equipment produced readings they described as unexplained, though skeptics would later argue the results could be dismissed as natural interference or metal debris buried decades prior. As the investigation progressed into the 4th hour, the first signs of the Harper property's lingering malevolence became undeniable. Both investigators heard rhythmic knocking echoing from underground, 3 beats, pause, 3 beats, a cadence unmistakably intentional. Dr. Marsh whispered into her recorder, "It's responding. When we move, it stops. When we stay still, it resumes." The sounds appeared concentrated within the circular vegetation ring, as if the earth itself had become a sentient entity. Torres pressed microphones to the ground, attempting to locate the source, but it remained elusive, an intelligent pattern without origin. After 5 hours, their senses faltered. Disorientation set in, compass readings conflicted. Paths that should have led outward spiraled back toward the foundation. Trees seemed to shift in subtle ways, visually inconsistent, producing a claustrophobic sense of being trapped. Marsh's voice trembled. "We're moving north, but we're back at the same spot. This isn't possible." Torres echoed the alarm, noting the compasses both confirmed yet betrayed reality. At this moment, the site revealed its most disturbing feature: a manipulation of space itself. In the final 20 minutes, the camera captured a fleeting, indistinct figure near the center of the foundation. Marsh and Torres initially saw nothing, but frame-by-frame analysis later suggested a human-like shape standing motionless among the trees, dark-cloaked and impossibly still. Resolution was insufficient to confirm identity, but the figure matched historical descriptions of Lydia Harper. Their ordeal did not end with departure. Both reported recurring nightmares of underground chambers, voices in unrecognizable languages, and a relentless sensation of being watched. Torres awoke for months with limestone dust under his fingernails, scientifically matched to East Tennessee soil. Marsh eventually closed her practice and vanished from public life, while Torres deleted all records and refused further interviews. The 1995 investigation proved one undeniable truth. The Harper site was not a relic of historical tragedy. It was an active, intelligent locus of phenomena capable of manipulating perception, inducing fear, and leaving a lasting psychological imprint on those who dared enter. Every professional attempt to investigate seemed to bring the property's lingering presence into contact with modern consciousness, a reminder that some thresholds, once crossed, can never be fully sealed. Next, we will explore the 2018 survey that detected a massive void beneath the Harper site, decades after its demolition, suggesting the heart of the mystery still slumbers beneath the surface, waiting. More than 2 decades after Marsh and Torres's chilling investigation, the Harper property remained officially sealed and largely forgotten until September 2018. A survey crew from the Tennessee Department of Transportation arrived to conduct preliminary assessments for a proposed road expansion. Unaware of the site's notorious history, the 3-person team encountered immediate and inexplicable anomalies. GPS devices provided inconsistent readings, as if the land itself refused to be mapped. Electronic measuring equipment malfunctioned, registering impossible data. But the most disturbing discovery came from ground-penetrating radar. The GPR revealed a void directly beneath the former root cellar, supposedly filled with concrete and rubble in 1972. The anomaly appeared as a vast chamber, roughly 30 feet in diameter and 12 feet high, contradicting official records. The survey supervisor filed a detailed report, describing the readings as impossible and inconsistent with known geology. Attempts to explain it as a cave or sinkhole were dismissed by geologists familiar with the limestone terrain. Nothing in that area could naturally form such a hollow. The crew's report recommended halting development and conducting further investigation, yet bureaucratic decisions overruled caution. The road project was cancelled for unrelated budgetary reasons, and no additional research was undertaken. Only months later, the area received an unusual designation as protected wetlands by the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. Official documents cited drainage patterns and seasonal flooding, though independent environmentalists noted minimal surface water and vegetation inconsistent with wetland ecology. Locals familiar with the Harper case suspected deliberate suppression, a governmental effort to prevent further exploration of the site. Even in 2018, the H.H. Harper property maintained its unnerving character. Crew members reported persistent unease while working near the foundation. Shadows seemed to shift unnaturally, and a profound silence, no birds, no insects, permeated the immediate area. The land itself, surveyors noted, felt hollow beneath their feet, echoing accounts of disorientation reported over generations. For nearly 150 years, the Harper site had resisted intrusion, leaving no single investigator unscarred by its presence. This hidden void, an unexplained cavity below the Earth's surface, reignited questions about what Lydia Harper had left behind. Was this an artifact of her dark rituals, a subterranean threshold between worlds, or merely a geological anomaly amplified by local legend? The evidence from 2018, combined with centuries of disappearances, suggests something far more deliberate and dangerous than a natural feature. Spatial anomalies, underground knocking, and unexplained visions appear to emanate from this very location. The void beneath the surface, like a silent heartbeat, links past and present, connecting 1869 to 2018 in a continuum of fear and mystery. Authorities continue to restrict access. Signage and protective measures ensure no casual visitor can approach. The Tennessee Historical Commission refuses to acknowledge the site's significance, citing insufficient documentation, while online communities and amateur investigators debate the legitimacy of leaked reports and footage. The void remains a tantalizing reminder. No demolition, no decades of restriction, no scientific survey has altered the essence of what lies beneath. The Harper property may be gone above ground, but beneath, a chamber, cold, dark, and unknowable, awaits. Its presence persists, defying logic, challenging perception, and serving as a chilling testament to a power that has haunted East Tennessee for over a century. What lurks in that underground void? Some say curiosity alone could be deadly, that those who venture too close risk vanishing, just as Dr. Thorne, Dr. Morrison, and countless others did. Next, we will explore the final contemporary incidents and eyewitness accounts that reveal the Harper site's sinister influence reaching into the 21st century. Even after decades of containment, the Harper site refused to remain dormant. The first reports in the 21st century arrived quietly, but with an unsettling consistency. In 2004, a group of amateur paranormal investigators claimed to have accessed the restricted property under cover of darkness. Though most of their accounts were vague, a few contained unnerving details that corresponded with historical records unavailable to the public. They reported hearing rhythmic knocking beneath the overgrown foundation, 3 beats, pause, 3 beats, and described a sudden disorientation that forced them to circle the site repeatedly before escaping. Similar phenomena resurfaced in 2010. A pair of hikers, unfamiliar with the legend, entered the Cherokee National Forest near Elizabethton. Their GPS devices malfunctioned, compasses spun without alignment, and one hiker reported faint whispering in a language neither understood. By the time they returned to the trailhead, both were pale, sweating, and disoriented. The experience left a lingering psychological mark, recurring nightmares, the sensation of being watched, and an unshakable fear of underground spaces. The most documented contemporary incident occurred in October 2015. A team of documentary filmmakers seeking to explore paranormal sites in Tennessee attempted to film near the Harper property. Security personnel stationed by the county prevented direct access, but the crew set up cameras in the surrounding forest. Within minutes, their equipment began malfunctioning. Batteries drained unusually quickly, cameras recorded distorted images, and the audio captured inexplicable low-frequency hums. One camera, when reviewed frame by frame, revealed a fleeting silhouette, a woman in 19th century attire, standing among the trees, her face obscured yet unnervingly present. Though the crew insisted they had not seen anyone while filming, the footage sparked online debate and renewed public interest. Medical professionals and psychologists consulted on these cases noted a recurring pattern: exposure to the site, or even its immediate vicinity, was linked to extreme disorientation, auditory hallucinations, and psychological trauma consistent with prolonged stress or sensory deprivation. Yet these effects defied conventional explanation. Victims reported physiological responses, rapid heartbeat, vertigo, and unexplained tremors, without any identifiable cause. Soil samples, in one 2015 instance, even contained traces consistent with the limestone from the Harper root cellar, echoing Dr. Torres's earlier experience decades prior. Authorities remained cautious, enforcing strict no trespassing laws, posting warning signs, and restricting access under environmental and safety pretenses. Official narratives frame incidents as isolated or coincidental, but local residents continue to tell cautionary tales. To ignore the silence in the woods, the hollow ground, or the three-beat knocking is to invite danger. Online forums and private groups meticulously track these occurrences, correlating them with historical disappearances, Thorne's expedition, and reports of Lydia Harper sightings. A pattern emerges over nearly 150 years. Anyone who approaches the Harper property risks disorientation, psychological trauma, or worse. The site's influence transcends time, a recurring echo of the events from 1869. Observers consistently report rhythmic sounds, glimpses of a spectral figure, and the sensation of underground spaces existing outside known reality. The Harper property is more than a physical location, it is a nexus, a threshold where the ordinary rules of space, perception, and mortality appear dangerously thin. Next, we will delve into first-hand accounts from contemporary witnesses who narrowly escaped. The site, revealing the Harper phenomenon's enduring and sinister grip on the human mind. By the late 2010s, the Harper phenomenon had transcended folklore and entered the realm of first-hand modern encounters. Among the most chilling were the experiences of hikers, amateur researchers, and passers-by who inadvertently approached the former Harper site. In March 2017, a group of 3 hikers, residents of Knoxville, documented an ordeal that would later be reviewed by independent paranormal researchers. Gregory Wallace, the de facto leader, described entering the forest with a sense of casual curiosity. Within minutes, however, he noticed an oppressive stillness. The usual sounds of the forest, birdsong, rustling leaves, distant wildlife, were entirely absent. Everything went quiet, Wallace later recounted. It wasn't just silence. It was like the world itself had been sucked out. The air felt heavy, and I couldn't take a full breath. His companions, both experienced in backcountry navigation, reported similar feelings of unease. Then came the knocking. At first faint, it grew in a precise rhythm. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats. Each pulse seemed to resonate through the forest floor, vibrating the hikers' bones. Attempting to locate the source, they found themselves circling in confusing patterns. Compass readings contradicted each other. GPS devices blinked erratically, and the familiar landmarks of the forest seemed to shift before their eyes. One of the hikers, Jennifer Cates, reported seeing a figure standing beyond the overgrowth. She was wearing a long dress, old-fashioned, greyish, Cates said. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but she didn't move. She just watched. And then, she smiled. It wasn't a human smile. It was wrong, like she was imitating something she had seen but never understood. The hikers fled, abandoning backpacks and supplies in their haste. Though physically unharmed, all 3 experienced lingering psychological effects. Cates described recurring dreams in which she wandered underground corridors, hearing whispers in a language she could not comprehend. Wallace reported waking with dirt under his fingernails, though they had not touched the forest floor. Similar encounters occurred later that year. A university research assistant surveying the site for environmental studies found himself trapped in a disorienting loop. Paths that should have led to the road continually returned him to the overgrown foundation. His camera captured shadowy figures that appeared to move independently of natural light or wind. By the time he escaped, he was convinced the area itself had manipulated his perception. Psychologists and researchers reviewing these incidents noted a pattern. Exposure to the Harper site or its immediate surroundings produces consistent effects: spatial disorientation, auditory hallucinations, glimpses of a spectral figure, and physiological stress responses that defy conventional explanation. The echoes of Lydia Harper's presence, whether supernatural or psychological, continue to assert a haunting influence over anyone who approaches the location. Even after 150 years, the Harper site remains active, an invisible trap embedded in the Tennessee hills. Each witness contributes to the unsettling continuity of the legend, a threshold where reality warps, the line between life and disappearance thins, and the echoes of the past demand attention. Next, we will explore the horrifying consequences faced by those who attempted prolonged investigation of the Harper site, including disappearances and unexplained deaths that continue to plague the legend. By the 1960s and 70s, the Harper case had drawn serious attention from professional investigators and academics. Among the most prominent was Dr. Robert Thorne, a respected historian and folklorist. His obsession with uncovering the truth behind the Harper disappearances led him to obtain rare permissions to study the property firsthand. On August 14, 1969, he arrived at the site accompanied by two graduate students, Michael Chen and Sarah Duval. The house, though long abandoned, still radiated a presence that unnerved even the most rational minds. Roof beams had collapsed, walls were water-stained, and vegetation had begun to consume the structure. Yet the root cellar remained astonishingly intact, dry and solid, as if preserved against time itself. For 3 days, Thorne meticulously documented the site, photographing symbols carved into the cellar walls, geometric patterns identical to those found in Lydia Harper's mysterious grimoire. Both students noted an oppressive atmosphere, a heaviness in the air that seemed almost sentient. On the 3rd day, ignoring the protests of his colleagues, Thorne descended alone into the root cellar. His final journal entry describes a moment of vertigo at the cellar's center, accompanied by rhythmic knocking and a faint, unexplainable sound that only he could hear. Thorne's decision to spend the night alone would prove fatal. The following morning, when he failed to return, search parties discovered his vehicle, equipment, and even a flashlight left on the floor, but no trace of Thorne himself. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation later found his tape recorder in the root cellar, containing 40 minutes of recordings. For the first 30 minutes, Thorne's notes were calm and professional. Then his voice shifted. He spoke of unseen presences, walls that seemed to breathe, and voices he could not comprehend. The final minutes captures a rhythmic knocking, distress, and Thorne calling out for his colleagues before a heavy impact ended the recording. Thorne vanished without a trace. In 1972, Dr. Patricia Morrison, a colleague attempting to continue Thorne's research, also disappeared after visiting the site following its demolition. Her vehicle was found abandoned at a rest stop 30 miles away. She was never seen again. Other researchers, like David Keller in 1978, encountered intimidation from authorities when attempting to study the Harper case, effectively halting serious academic investigation. The pattern was unmistakable. Those who drew too close to the Harper legacy faced disappearances, threats, or enforced silence. These events established a chilling precedent. The Harper site was no longer merely a historical curiosity. It had become a locus of danger. Serious engagement with the property came at a cost. The disappearances of Thorne, Morrison, and others serve as grim warnings to all who might underestimate the power of the legacy left behind by Lydia Harper. Even decades after the house's destruction, the echoes of those who vanished continued to shape the behavior of local authorities and curious visitors alike. The Harper threshold, it seemed, exacted a toll from those who sought to cross it with intent. But the story did not end with the 1970s. In later decades, witnesses reported strange phenomena, auditory anomalies, and terrifying visions that mirrored the experiences of the original investigators, confirming that whatever force occupied the Harper site remained active and indifferent to human presence. Next, we will explore these later modern encounters, focusing on hikers, amateur researchers, and professional investigators whose experiences reinforced the enduring horror of the Harper site. By the early 1980s, the Harper site, though long demolished and officially restricted, had acquired a dark notoriety among locals and thrill-seekers. On March 7, 1983, Park Ranger Thomas Waverley of the Cherokee National Forest encountered 3 hikers, Gregory Morton, David Sullivan, and Jennifer Reeves, approximately 2 miles northeast of the former Harper property. Their behavior was immediately alarming. The trio appeared disoriented, panicked, and fixated on something unseen. When Waverley approached, they turned as one, eyes wide with terror, and initially refused to communicate. Gradually, the hikers recounted hearing rhythmic knocking emanating from underground near an old stone foundation, the remnants of the Harper site. Jennifer Reeves described seeing a woman standing near the foundation, dressed in 19th century clothing. Her description matched historical photographs of Lydia Harper, but it was the expression on the woman's face that terrified her most. A smile twisted beyond human comprehension, as if instinctively imitating humanity without truly understanding it. Waverley's report noted the area was eerily silent. No birds sang, no insects buzzed, even the wind seemed absent. Examination of the site revealed nothing tangible, yet the hikers' fear and confusion were undeniable. The phenomenon persisted in October 1987, when a group of 5 local teenagers ventured to the site on Halloween night. Mark Patterson, Lisa Henderson, Robert Mallister, Jennifer Yates, and Thomas Bishop were drawn by ghost stories and curiosity. Their initial exploration was uneventful until Lisa reported faint knocking sounds beneath the overgrown foundation. Soon all 5 heard it. 3 knocks, a pause, 3 knocks again, following a pattern that seemed to respond to their presence. When they tried to leave, disorientation set in. Trees, paths, and compass directions became impossible to reconcile. They repeatedly found themselves back at the same spot, the foundation looming before them despite their attempts to walk straight. Panic escalated, and only after repeated desperate efforts did they finally reach their vehicle. The aftermath was equally disturbing. Several teenagers experienced recurring nightmares featuring a woman in period clothing standing at the foot of their beds, echoing Lydia Harper's historical likeness. Lisa Henderson began speaking in her sleep, repeating phrases that linguists later identified as resembling corrupted medieval German, a language she had no conscious knowledge of. Symptoms of anxiety, disorientation, and psychological trauma persisted long after their visit. Local authorities increased patrols, erected additional warning signs, and declared the site permanently off-limits, yet the haunting pattern continued. These incidents underscored a chilling reality. The Harper phenomenon was not confined to the past. Regardless of whether witnesses were seasoned investigators or curious teenagers, those who approached the site consistently reported auditory anomalies, spatial disorientation, and apparitional sightings. The legacy of Lydia Harper and her root cellar appeared undiminished, a force indifferent to time or circumstance. The echoes of the lost continued to ripple outward, drawing the unwary into fear, confusion, and in some cases, permanent disappearance. Next, we delve into the first professional modern investigation of the Harper site, where trained investigators encountered phenomena that defied explanation and forced a confrontation with something far beyond human understanding. By June 1995, the Harper site had acquired an almost mythical status among paranormal researchers. The house was long gone, reduced to overgrown foundations, yet the tales of disappearance, disorientation, and strange phenomena persisted. Dr. Elizabeth Marsh, a psychologist specializing in trauma, and Raymond Torres, an investigator with a background in environmental documentation, obtained official permission from county authorities to survey the area under the pretext of a historical study. Their real objective, disclosed only in private notes, was to investigate the persistent supernatural claims that had haunted the site for over a century. Arriving on June the 15th, the pair carried video cameras, audio recorders, electromagnetic field detectors, and other instruments designed to capture anomalies. The initial hours were methodical. Measurements were taken, photographs documented the foundation, and vegetation patterns were recorded. Torres noted an unusual circle in the overgrowth, roughly 15 feet in diameter, where plant growth was inexplicably sparse. Dr. Marsh theorized soil composition differences, yet a subtle unease settled over them. The forest was silent, eerily so. Birds, insects, even wind seemed absent. Approximately 2 hours into their survey, the first auditory phenomena emerged. Faint knocking, rhythmic and deliberate, echoed from beneath the earth near the circular area. Torres adjusted microphones, tracing the sound, which seemed to respond to their movements. "That is definitely not natural," Dr. Marsh observed. "It has a pattern. 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks. It seems aware of us." Despite attempts to rationalize the sounds, metal debris, geological features, the pattern's intelligence and consistency unnerved them. 3 hours into the investigation, spatial disorientation began. The terrain seemed to shift. Trees appeared unfamiliar. Compass readings conflicted, and straight paths curved inexplicably. Dr. Marsh expressed alarm on the recording. "We're walking north. Compass confirms it, but we keep ending up back at the foundation. This is impossible." Torres confirmed the same observations. Fear intensified as the pair abandoned some equipment, marking trees for navigation, and attempted a straight-line escape from the foundation. At the 5-hour mark, video footage captured something far more disturbing. As they exited, the camera, pointed backward, recorded a shadowy figure standing near the foundation. The brief image, lasting just 3 seconds, appeared to be a woman in dark, period clothing. Resolution was insufficient for identification, but the form's shape and posture suggested deliberate placement rather than coincidence. Marsh and Torres later admitted they did not notice the figure in real time. The psychological aftermath was profound. Both reported persistent nightmares, with Dr. Marsh dreaming of stone chambers underground and unintelligible voices echoing. Torres experienced inexplicable physical evidence of the site. Dirt under his fingernails, tested and confirmed to match limestone soil from East Tennessee, despite his Arizona residence. Their experiences reinforced the legacy of the Harper site. Proximity to its center, even centuries after the original events, carried tangible and lasting consequences. Next, we explore the modern rediscovery of the site through 2018 survey anomalies, where technology reveals that the Harper root cellar, and whatever lies beneath, remains intact and active, defying both demolition and time. After the 2018 survey revealed the void beneath the Harper site, a new wave of modern encounters began to surface, blending fear, confusion, and unexplainable phenomena. Hikers, surveyors, and amateur investigators reported experiences that eerily mirrored accounts stretching back over 150 years. One of the first documented incidents occurred in late 2018, when a group of local hikers ventured near the restricted Harper site, despite warning signs and dense forest undergrowth. What began as an ordinary trek quickly descended into disorientation. Paths that should have led them away from the site looped inexplicably back to the same clearing. Even compasses spun without reason, and GPS devices alternated between showing their location in the forest and coordinates that did not exist on maps. Several hikers reported hearing rhythmic knocking underground, the familiar 3 beats, a pause, and 3 more, that had haunted every generation of visitors. One witness described it as a heartbeat echoing from the bones of the earth, deliberately following us, taunting us. The psychological impact was immediate. Panic, nausea, and acute vertigo set in, forcing the hikers to retreat. One individual later confided that they felt watched, not just by someone, but by something that existed beneath the ground itself, aware of every movement. The echoes of Lydia Harper's presence seemed to persist, indifferent to time or human intervention. In 2019, amateur researchers documented strange electromagnetic readings when attempting to survey the site from a safe distance. Cameras captured fleeting shadows resembling a woman in 19th century attire, consistent with historic depictions of Lydia Harper. Most observers dismissed these figures as tricks of light and overgrown vegetation, yet a minority insisted that the form's posture and movement were unnatural, almost deliberate. Reports of spatial distortion persisted. Even when standing still, visitors felt subtly nudged, their sense of direction warped. Some reported hearing whispers or unintelligible speech, often resembling corrupted languages, echoing the linguistic anomalies documented among teenagers in 1987. The pattern across these modern accounts was unmistakable. Those who approached the site, or even ventured near its perimeter, were confronted with phenomena that defied natural explanation. The void detected beneath the former cellar seemed to anchor the disturbances, acting as a focal point for disorientation, auditory hallucinations, and visual anomalies. The recurrence of specific patterns, 3 beats of knocking, glimpses of Lydia Harper, a profound wrongness in the atmosphere, suggests continuity in the supernatural or anomalous forces at work. Local authorities remained largely silent, enforcing access restrictions but providing little explanation. Online forums became a gathering point for accounts, photographs, and theories. Some suggested a residual curse, while others speculated that the Harper property remained a liminal space where the boundary between dimensions thinned. No matter the explanation, one reality became undeniable. The Harper phenomenon was alive in the modern era, capable of manipulating perception, inducing terror, and drawing individuals into its inexplicable influence. Next, we explore the personal psychological consequences suffered by those who have encountered the Harper site firsthand, including long-term trauma, disorientation, and the unsettling question of why some survive while others vanish without a trace. The Harper property does not only claim the bodies of those who enter, it infiltrates the mind, leaving survivors haunted long after they leave. Across generations, witnesses have reported intense psychological effects, often indistinguishable from severe trauma. In 1987, the 5 teenagers who explored the overgrown foundation experienced recurring nightmares, hallucinations, and inexplicable behavior. Lisa Henderson's parents reported her speaking in her sleep, repeating phrases in a corrupted medieval German, a language she could not possibly have learned. Linguistics experts later verified the tape contained structured patterns resembling ancient dialects, leaving researchers baffled. Similar disturbances haunted Dr. Elizabeth Marsh and Raymond Torres in 1995. Both described repeated dreams of being trapped underground, unable to find exits, while hearing voices in foreign languages. Torres even discovered dirt under his fingernails in Arizona, soil analyzed to match the limestone of the Harper site. These incidents highlight a chilling consistency. Proximity to the site induces spatial disorientation, auditory anomalies, and lingering psychological distress. Many who investigate the location seriously report long-term anxiety, compulsive checking of maps or equipment, and a pervasive sense of being followed or observed. Even casual hikers occasionally experience minor versions of these effects: sudden vertigo, inexplicable confusion, or an overwhelming sensation of wrongness in the surrounding environment. Researchers speculate that the Harper site may act as a psychological amplifier, intensifying innate fears while imposing distortions on perception and cognition. Historical patterns reinforce this notion. From the original 1869 victims to Dr. Thorne in 1969, those who spent extended time at the Harper house or root cellar disappeared or suffered severe mental strain. Dr. Patricia Morrison vanished in 1972 after attempting to continue Thorne's research. Her disappearance, though officially a missing person case, fits the pattern established over a century. Even more chilling are accounts from modern visitors who report lingering paranoia, sudden panic attacks, and a recurring sense that the space itself is alive, watching, reacting, and manipulating. Survivors often describe the sensation as if time and distance bend unnaturally. Objects shift, paths loop back on themselves, and sound travels in ways that defy logic. Psychologists studying trauma have noted that these experiences align with known stress responses but extend beyond typical triggers. The combination of sensory distortion, visual anomalies, and the persistent figure resembling Lydia Harper creates a uniquely potent psychological environment. Researchers theorize that the site may be a liminal zone, a threshold between dimensions or realities, where the human mind is particularly vulnerable. Those who over-identify with the phenomena, such as Dr. Thorne, Dr. Morrison, or Torres, are at the highest risk of disappearance or permanent psychological disruption. The Harper site demonstrates a terrifying principle. Encountering the unknown is not merely a passive experience. It actively engages, tests, and punishes those who seek to understand it. Long after leaving, survivors recount sensations of eyes watching them in their homes, sounds resonating in empty rooms, and recurring dreams that replay events from the site with horrifying accuracy. In some cases, the trauma extends to physical manifestations, from unexplained marks on the body to sudden health deterioration, a reminder that the Harper phenomenon is not confined to a single century or dimension. Next, We delve into the final modern disappearances and the chilling evidence that suggests the Harper Void remains active today, continuing its unbroken legacy of terror and mystery. Even after the Harper House was demolished and the site ostensibly sealed, the terror beneath the Tennessee soil refused to vanish. In 2018, a survey crew from the Tennessee Department of Transportation stumbled upon evidence that would rekindle fears spanning over a century. Ground-penetrating radar readings revealed a massive void, roughly 30 feet in diameter and 12 feet high, located directly beneath the filled root cellar. Official records insisted the cellar had been permanently sealed with concrete and rubble in 1972, yet the radar indicated a chamber that should not exist. The crew reported erratic GPS signals, electronic equipment failures, and an oppressive, unnatural silence in the immediate area. Even seasoned surveyors described an overwhelming sense of being observed, a sensation they could not rationalize. The void is not merely a physical anomaly, it is entwined with human consciousness. Historical patterns suggest that those drawn close to it are subjected to distortions of space, perception, and time. In 1995, Dr. Elizabeth Marsh and Raymond Torres became disoriented while attempting to leave the site, their compasses spinning wildly, trees and markers seemingly shifting positions. Similar experiences were reported in 1987 by 5 teenagers exploring the overgrown foundation, repeatedly finding themselves back at the same spot despite walking straight paths. These recurrent distortions suggest that the void itself manipulates reality, or at least perception, maintaining a psychological and spatial trap for those who linger. Beyond the disorientation, the Harper Void appears to have a magnetic connection to the supernatural. Witnesses consistently report the sound of rhythmic knocking emanating from underground, a pattern that echoes the original testimonies from 1869. Whether it is communication, a warning, or an invitation, the knocks seem to respond to human presence. In rare cases, observers glimpse a figure resembling Lydia Harper, often described as standing motionless in 19th-century attire, her expression eerily wrong, a mimicry of humanity twisted into something alien. Some encounters are brief, a flash in the trees or a shape captured on video, while others are more immersive, leaving witnesses psychologically scarred for years. The modern disappearances, though fewer in number than those of the 19th and 20th centuries, reinforce the ongoing danger. Individuals like Dr. Thorne in 1969 and Dr. Patricia Morrison in 1972 vanished after prolonged exposure, and amateur investigators often report persistent nightmares, auditory hallucinations, and spatial disorientation. Contemporary reports, though sparse, suggest that the void continues to claim those who probe too deeply, especially those seeking to uncover the site's secrets. The patterns are strikingly consistent. Proximity, curiosity, and time spent investigating appear to amplify risk. The void beneath the Harper property embodies a unique convergence of history, psychology, and the unexplained. It is not merely a remnant of a haunted house or a local legend. It is a locus where reality itself seems to bend, enforcing a terrifying hierarchy. The more one seeks to understand, the greater the danger. Even official attempts to restrict access, obscure records, and demolish structures have failed to contain the phenomenon. The Harper Void remains a silent, subterranean witness to centuries of human curiosity and fear, waiting for the next individual who dares to answer the knocking. Next, we explore the supernatural patterns across 150 years and the rituals that may have opened the Harper threshold, revealing why this location has never truly been closed. The Harper property, now buried beneath decades of secrecy and forest overgrowth, was more than a site of unexplained disappearances. It was a carefully orchestrated focal point of something far older and darker. Examination of Lydia Harper's grimoire, coupled with Robert Thorne's photographic evidence from 1969, reveals a series of symbols, geometric diagrams, and ritual instructions that suggest a deliberate attempt to manipulate reality. The root cellar, a deceptively simple limestone structure, appears to have served as a ritual chamber, a threshold between the known world and something else entirely. The symbols discovered by Thorne, geometric patterns etched into the walls, correspond with diagrams in the grimoire meant to open pathways, not merely summon spirits, but potentially alter the very fabric of space and consciousness. Historical accounts from 1869 indicate that the first victims, 14 people attending a prayer gathering, may have unwittingly participated in a ritual under Harper's influence. Survivors' testimonies speak of the house itself shifting, rooms elongating, and hallways leading nowhere. Some described seeing figures that were unmistakably human, yet moved in ways that defied anatomy, their faces twisted in frozen expressions of horror. Lydia Harper, according to these accounts, appeared intermittently, her presence both commanding and passive, guiding the victims toward an unseen fate. The precise purpose of the ritual remains uncertain, though the repeated association of underground spaces, knocking sounds, and altered perception suggests Harper's objective was to create a persistent, self-sustaining phenomenon, a doorway that would remain open across generations. Modern investigators unwittingly retraced these steps. Dr. Thorne's tape recordings capture his growing terror as he descends into the cellar, noting that walls seem to breathe and wait. Spurs of the past echoed around him. Dr. Marsh and Torres, more than 2 decades later, experienced similar phenomena in the open air above the filled cellar. Trees shifted in impossible ways, compasses spun, and the very ground felt alive, suggesting the ritual had left a permanent scar on the environment itself. Even technological instruments, from GPS devices to ground-penetrating radar, have produced readings inconsistent with known physics, further hinting that whatever Harper invoked was not merely spiritual, but manipulated matter and space. Researchers like David Keller discovered a chilling statistical anomaly. Between 1870 and 1920, local deaths near the property were 5 times higher than the norm, mostly ruled as accidents or suicides. This pattern strongly implies that proximity to the Harper threshold carried latent risk, regardless of whether the property remained accessible. Survivor accounts from 1983 to 1995 reinforce this observation. Disorientation, auditory hallucinations, and glimpses of Lydia Harper herself recur consistently among independent witnesses. The threshold is not bound to a single century, location, or medium. It is a persistent locus of danger, triggered whenever someone approaches, whether intentionally or unknowingly. In essence, the Harper threshold appears to be a self-sustaining gateway, a convergence of ritual, intent, and human susceptibility. Its persistence defies conventional explanations, suggesting that Harper's work was neither accidental nor incomplete. She created a mechanism, a spatial and psychological trap, that continues to operate centuries later, claiming the curious, the brave, and the foolish. The implications are chilling. While the house has been destroyed and records restricted, the threshold remains active beneath the surface, waiting for the next unknowing visitors to cross its invisible boundary. Next, we delve into the psychological effects on those who have encountered the threshold, revealing why some investigators are permanently scarred and others vanish entirely. The Harper threshold does not merely claim bodies, it preys on minds. Witness accounts from every documented century reveal a consistent pattern of psychological trauma among those who encounter the property. From the original 1869 victims to the modern investigators, a recurring thread emerges: disorientation, auditory hallucinations, and an overwhelming sense of wrongness. Dr. Elizabeth Marsh described her experience in 1995 as being trapped in a place that refuses to acknowledge reality, where time bends and sound has substance. This is echoed by Dr. Raymond Torres, who reported waking with limestone dust under his fingernails, despite living hundreds of miles from East Tennessee. The property, it seems, imprints itself upon those who approach, physically and mentally. Survivor testimony offers further insight. Teenagers who ventured near the site in 1987 experienced intense spatial disorientation. Paths became circular, compass readings impossible, and the very forest seemed to rewrite itself around them. Lisa Henderson's parents reported her speaking in a corrupted medieval German during sleep, a language she had never learned. Linguistics experts concluded that the speech was not consciously generated, suggesting that the threshold affects cognitive processes at a profound level, temporarily rewiring the mind to perceive or communicate across realities. These effects are not minor hallucinations, they are persistent, long-lasting, and sometimes permanent. Investigators like Dr. Thorne faced a deeper horror. His journal entries show a gradual unraveling of rational thought as he approached the root cellar in 1969. The cellar's walls, still intact after a century of decay, were covered in symbols identical to those in Harper's grimoire. Thorne recorded auditory hallucinations of rhythmic knocking and voices, culminating in a final tape where he speaks in terror, claiming the dead were beneath him, waiting. His disappearance remains unexplained, but forensic analysis of the tape reveals multiple overlapping voices in frequencies impossible to produce naturally. The threshold does not merely intimidate, it exerts influence over perception, bending reality to its will. The psychological impact is cumulative. Observers who spend prolonged time near the site are at risk of permanent cognitive and emotional distortion. Even brief visits can trigger nightmares, compulsive obsessions, and long-term anxiety. Dr. Marsh's nightmares persisted for months, depicting endless stone corridors, voices in unknown languages, and an oppressive presence that refused to release her. Torres described inexplicable physical traces of the site appearing in his daily life, as if the property could follow and imprint itself beyond its spatial boundaries. The Harper threshold, in essence, reaches into consciousness itself, leaving its mark as an invisible scar. Perhaps most chilling is the pattern of investigator disappearances. From Thorne in 1969 to Dr. Morrison in 1972, proximity to the threshold correlates with permanent loss. It suggests that human curiosity is a lure, and that the boundary between observer and phenomenon is perilously thin. The property may allow temporary glimpses into its secret, but those who seek to understand fully risk being absorbed entirely. Even in modern times, attempts to study the site have resulted in technological anomalies, disorientation, and glimpses of a figure resembling Lydia Harper. The psychological influence is active, deliberate, and inescapable. Next, we explore the modern attempts to seal the Harper site, the GPR anomaly discovered in 2018, and what remains hidden beneath the forest floor, defying all efforts to close the threshold permanently. By 2018, the Harper site had long been considered a place of myth and terror, sealed by county authorities and protected under environmental regulations. Yet even decades after the demolition of the house, the land refused to yield its secrets. Survey crews from the Tennessee Department of Transportation, tasked with preliminary assessments for a proposed road expansion, stumbled upon an anomaly that would reignite the shadow of Harper's legacy. Using ground-penetrating radar, the crew detected a massive void beneath the site, precisely where the root cellar had once stood. Measurements indicated a chamber roughly 30 feet in diameter and 12 feet high, directly contradicting official records that the cellar had been filled with concrete and rubble in 1972. The supervisor's report described the readings as impossible and inconsistent with known geology. Attempts to verify the anomaly with electromagnetic sensors and GPS mapping yielded erratic, contradictory results. Equipment malfunctioned repeatedly in the vicinity, compasses spun without explanation, and digital instruments recorded data that defied physical laws. The site itself seemed to resist measurement, as though the forest and soil actively concealed the structure beneath. Even seasoned surveyors described an unshakable sensation of being observed during their work, a pervasive awareness that transcended logic. The Tennessee Department of Transportation ultimately cancelled the project, citing budgetary constraints. Yet insiders familiar with the report whispered that authorities were reluctant to disturb what lay beneath. Historical patterns suggest that what exists underground at Harper is not inert. From Thorne's auditory hallucinations in 1969 to the hiker's 1983 experience, underground knocking has been a constant. Modern investigators, including Dr. Marsh and Torres in 1995, documented the same rhythmic sounds emerging from the soil. Witnesses repeatedly describe hearing these beats, growing closer and then retreating, as if whatever lies beneath responds to human presence. In some cases, those who approach are overcome with disorientation, unable to navigate even simple terrain. This aligns uncannily with the spatial distortions described in survivor accounts from 1869 and later generations. Even the figure of Lydia Harper appears to transcend time. Observers across centuries have reported seeing a woman dressed in 19th-century attire near the foundation, motionless, staring. In 2018, aerial photography and survey imaging captured anomalies that some researchers interpreted as shapes consistent with a human presence, though these remain inconclusive. The layering of reports, from physical voids to visual apparitions and psychological effects, suggests an integrated phenomenon, not a series of coincidences. Officially, the site is now untouchable, designated as protected wetlands. Public access is forbidden and historical markers are denied. Yet online communities and amateur researchers continue to speculate. Leaked documents, historical correspondence, and eyewitness testimonies circulate, hinting that the Harper threshold may be a portal of sorts, one that remains active despite efforts to suppress or ignore it. The chamber beneath the former house may hold remnants of rituals, spatial anomalies, or entities that refuse to be contained. Its presence challenges not only historical understanding, but also the fundamental laws of reality, suggesting that some boundaries, once opened, cannot easily be closed. Next, in Section 20, we will confront the culmination of the Harper legacy, the ongoing threat, the unanswered disappearances, and the chilling possibility that the threshold is not a relic of the past, but a living, waiting presence, still rees, ready to claim those who dare approach. Over 150 years have passed since that fateful October night in 1869, when 14 people entered the Harper house and vanished without a trace. Yet the echoes of that night continue to reverberate through time. From the disappearances of Dr. Thorne in 1969 and Dr. Morrison in 1972 to the inexplicable experiences of hikers, teenagers, and professional investigators, a chilling pattern persists. Proximity to the Harper site brings danger, confusion, and sometimes death. The threshold Lydia Harper created in her root cellar appears not to have been closed, her influence seeping across decades, claiming those who draw too close to her secrets. Despite the destruction of the house and the infilling of the cellar in 1972, modern surveys, including the 2018 GPR findings, indicate that something remains beneath the surface. The void detected is far larger than any documented foundation, a subterranean chamber defying both law and logic. Witnesses consistently report disorientation near the site. Compasses spin, GPS devices fail, and time itself seems to distort. The rhythmic knocking from below, first heard by the Harper congregation, then Thorne, then multiple modern investigators, continues to echo, as if calling, inviting, or warning. Those who hear it describe dread that is not merely psychological but deeply physically real, gripping the senses with an unnatural force. Sightings of a woman in 19th century attire, Lydia Harper herself, persist. She is described as motionless, staring and smiling in a way that feels instinctively wrong. Survivors of modern encounters recall her presence not as a fleeting apparition, but as a sentient, observing force. Some report nightmares, sleepwalking, and speaking in unknown languages, echoing the phenomena documented in the 1980s among local teenagers. Even soil inexplicably appears under the fingernails of those who leave, as Tor. Rez recounted after his 1995 investigation, suggesting a tangible connection between visitors and the chamber below. Authorities have attempted containment, sealing the site, restricting access, and labeling it protected wetlands. Yet the Harper threshold continues to resist control. Leaked records, forum discussions, and sporadic eyewitness reports imply that curious trespassers still encounter spatial anomalies, unexplained phenomena, and sometimes disappear entirely. The pattern is unmistakable. Those who investigate seriously, who attempt to peer beyond the ordinary, risk permanent loss. The Harper legacy is not merely historical, it is active, a living threat that transcends generations. For those hiking northeast of Elizabethton, the warnings remain clear. Silence that defies nature, soil that feels hollow, rhythmic knocking that beckons. These are the markers of a place that exists slightly outside normal reality. The threshold Lydia Harper opened, through ritual, knowledge, or something beyond human comprehension, remains ajar. The line between past and present, between life and disappearance, remains fragile and dangerous. 14 souls vanished in 1869. Countless others have confronted the site over the years, some traumatized, some lost, some inexplicably changed. The Harper house may be gone, but its influence lingers. The threshold remains open. And somewhere beneath the trees and soil of Tennessee, Lydia Harper waits. The knocking continues. The chamber waits. And those who dare answer may never return. The Harper story is not merely history, it is a caution. Some doors once opened cannot be closed. Some thresholds once crossed are eternal, and some presences, like Lydia Harper, endure far beyond death, patient, watching, and waiting.